in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Toulis.
And he wore that bow tie to the beach in Florida, where he spent some days with his family. And it was Daytona Beach shores where he was on the beachfront and took, on one occasion after church on Sunday, he took a walk on the beach in his slacks and his dress shirt and his bow tie, wanting to make sure that he had something to report to you, my listeners. Meanwhile, there has been going on, apart from our notice, a hostage crisis at the city attorney's office. Yes, that's right, a hostage crisis at the Chattanooga City Attorney's Office, where Phil Noblet presides with Deputy City Attorney Keith Reisman and others. And the hostage is a question. It is a question that has been there for 15 days without a response. A simple, very simple question of fact that I asked Keith in an email, December 18. The question is being treated, I would say, decently, though there is not an imminent sign of a rescue. City Council is sitting on its hands, again, unengaged and unwilling to have mercy on this matter. And there is the question is allowed to sleep on a cot, and the tying of his hands is now in the front. Initially, it was in the back, and the rations were very, very bad. But the city attorney's office is affording some carry-out food for the question, who is kept in a small room next to the conference room in the hallway outside the locked door. So it's a separate room there, and the question is held hostage with a very small window that overlooks East 11th Street. I don't think that from that, I've not been in that room, so I can't say that for sure, but I don't think that that he can see City Hall from that window. And the question pertains to transportation and administrative notice. And it said, why didn't the Tennessee General Assembly apply Title 55 to people traveling in their own conveyances on private business, not for profit and not for gain? If you say it did apply it to them, when? That is a question. So there's a very short missive that is being held hostage right now as we speak here on the David Toulis Show at the city attorney's office. Now, yesterday at Greater Emmanuel Apostolic Church, there was an event commemorating President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which, as you may remember from your reading, was a military measure designed to free slaves in the South. It had no intention of freeing slaves in the North, where the war effort was massively underway, and this was an effort to win sympathy with the British and European powers for the Union cause. And it was hoped to stir rebellion among the captive peoples in the southern states in the Confederacy. There was at the podium, according to a TV report that I watched about the event, commemorating that historical event, I think in 1864. There was Dr. Eleanor Woods, but also there was Sheriff Jim Hammond. Mayor Andy Burke was reportedly there as well. And David Roddy was at the microphone in that report. And the question that comes to mind for me is the alliance, if you will, between the NAACP, Dr. Eleanor Woods, and having a warm embrace with the Sheriff Jim Hammond there before the audience. And getting things done in the way of reform. Is it possible, if you're too close to the important people in the county, if you are on the inside with the mayor, if you're on the inside with David Roddy, the chief of police, is it possible for there to be things that shake up the status quo? Now, I would say that the answer is probably no, probably not. There were, though, you might say, concessions that were given, that were mentioned. And Dr. Woods was very glad to hear and praised Sheriff Hammond effusively from the microphone, and that was on the point of letting 18-year-old people apply for job of sheriff, particularly if they're minorities. So there is a 500 and on the city. Well, backing up. You can't carry a weapon until you're 21 in Tennessee, but you could be theoretically a minority, an African American, employed by the county sheriff's department, but not with a weapon. That would be a job possibly in the jail. So you'd be in corrections until the time you were of age to carry a weapon, and then you could theoretically have further training to be a patrol officer of some kind. Now, there is something I would say maybe slightly better, again, but an oblique concession, if you will, to the NAACP position in Hamilton County from David Roddy, and that is a $500 reward to collect a minority cadet. So if you collect or bring or refer to in a provable way an African American or other minority cadet person to be apply for and obtain a position in the next cadet class, you get a $500 reward. Now, what do you think? Is it possible at 800-8949-800-8949, is it possible that things like that, like having black officers, that this will ameliorate? Ameliorate means improve if you are in Red Bank. Is it possible that having minority officers will ameliorate the position of parties and races and classes that I would say are under a structural oppression? Okay, that is what policing and that is what law enforcement is, in my reading, by and large, for certain categories of people, even certain races. Policing, that, which of course I would include in that gerund, I would include sheriffing as well. Sheriffing, militarily informed sheriffing and policing together are a social management tool that one could say, one could argue, the white legal political establishment has brought to bear to protect the status quo, to protect the way things are, and so together these can this function be improved? Can it be made less burdensome, less fearsome? Okay, because fear is what policing is all about. Policing and sheriffing, following the statutory enforcement mechanism and theory, it is all about fear of the people, and some people fear police a lot more than others, right? The more, and I would say the more you know, the less fearful you are, and that's why I'm trying to be useful here on the David Tulis Show at FM 92.7 and 95.3 FM HD4. My goal is to be useful to you, my listener. What do you think? The number is 800-89400. I'm sorry, 800-8949, 800-8949. You report, and the world decides. Is having more black officers going to make a difference in what I would like to call a declining trade? Okay, policing is a declining trade. It is a declining profession, and every I think the police cadet, the police class, and maybe two a year. Not sure about that, but there's at least one a year where new inductees, new potential employees who are already on the payroll as trainees, they apply, they pass the drug test, background check, and they're interviewed, and then they become cadets. Their training is there's at least one group a year. They're harder and harder to get. We heard this in the Citizens Police Academy. The academy is intended as a kind of humanizing function, getting the people like me and you. I was your representative at the police academy, to see that officers and policemen are human, right? They're human beings. That's a pretty basic argument to be making. You have a whole Citizens Police Academy lasting for 9 weeks, and the goal is to humanize the police, to make them individual men and women, not just figures in a uniform bearing guns and armor and threat, right? They're not just that. The academy wants you to understand that is not what policing is all about. It's not about threat, violence, and danger to your rights, and the sudden whoop into the handcuffs, into the backseat of the cruiser, and down to the jail, or a citation. That's not what it's about. We are human beings fulfilling our duty. That is the goal. The profession is in long decline, and Ferguson, 4 years ago now, the Ferguson riots in Missouri, accelerated that trend, which has been already under heavy fire from humane journalists and writers such as Radley Balco, who's now a blogger at the Washington Post, and whose book whose book Warrior Cop is a notable addition. And if you want to find out what the story really is, get Radley Balco's work or subscribe to him at the Washington Post. The book is called Warrior Cop. So there is a decline in the public esteem for policing, and there are many things that are going to fill the gap, I would say. Now, if we want to save policing, now maybe you're a conservative, right? You're my listener here at the Sean Hannity station. You're a conservative, and you want to save policing. You believe in policing. You believe in blue honor, blue integrity, the blue line. And there are all kinds of blue things that you're for. You're for safety, right? You are a lover of security, and you think that somehow your security is in the police function, controlled by the state and controlled by the municipal corporation in our city of Chattanooga or city of East Ridge, city of Red Bank. That corporation has that function, has a kind of monopoly on that function. It's so strong monopoly that private parties dare not take any initiative in problem solving, crime solving, sniffing out bad guys and the like. The public, I say that even though police departments can't do their job without public cooperation. Okay, and we heard that from maybe it was Dan Avon, maybe someone else among the chiefs who spoke to the assembled host of citizens. There were about 30 every weekend or every week in the class. We can't do our jobs without cooperation of the public. So that function is there now. In a cartel, it is a function that is secured by the state, if you will, and secured by the city government. Mayor Andy Burke's claim on the executive power, serving the public, if you will, through the police function. There are trends against that, not just loss of credit, loss of esteem, but there are, I would say, technical solutions that are workarounds to the necessity, right? Ways of getting away from the necessity of having a very expensive, heavily manned. We have a gigantic police department in Chattanooga, 500 sworn officers. There are ways around that that will, over time, I would suggest, will make it more and more obvious that this is a burden we don't want to bear anymore. Not just the burden of the expense of $73 million in the budget, but the burden as against the spirit of the people of Chattanooga, the free, entrepreneurial-minded, forward-looking, independent, and charitable people like you, my listener, here in Chattanooga. The show is the David Tulis Show. Do thank you for tuning in. I did wear my bow tie on the beach Sunday at Daytona Beach Shores, and I don't know that Jeanette knew that I did that. I think she would have probably frowned at me if I had not taken that off. But because sometimes she said, "Well, you're going to the Walmart, David. You don't have to keep your bow tie on." And I said, "Well, I'm going in public, and I may be in our amazing yellow Hummer, and so I don't want to not be seen properly, right? The man who's your host here, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, the blogger with the biggest pen." So there is a hostage crisis going on right now at the city attorney's office. The question has been there for 15 days unanswered, and will it be released? Will there be release of this question about the rights of the people? Because that is what I'm, as your investigative reporter, that is what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about a clear statute and a city practice replicated in every city in the state. Okay, and I'm not saying Chattanooga is unique here. An abusive police practice, an enforcement of a statute that is outside the scope of the actual statute, and outside the archival origins of those rules, and many court cases that I have presented to City Council, asking for relief, right? Asking for relief from the policing function. And now this is something that I am trying to get an audience with Eleanor Woods, who has made two appearances with Sheriff Jim Hammond. The first one a couple days after the beating of interstate tax Charles Toney, and there was an attempt to placate, to calm, to make pacific, to make smooth and tranquil people who might otherwise be very angry and inclined to protest or to riot. Even I think that if that was the thinking for that press conference, the first one with Eleanor Woods and the sheriff, that there was really an overestimation of the passion and the anger of people in Chattanooga. The people in Chattanooga and I hope you're not included in this review here, are not easily riled and not easily stirred. They're not enough people who are angry at the status quo. There really are not. So my job as a reformer and person of ideas, right, giving people machinery for reform, is, I'd say, a lot harder on account of the quietness and tranquility of people here in Chattanooga. Though I have very specific things that are legally actionable that I've put out there for you. Whether it's a traffic case, you can use these instruments for your defense, or there are the defense I have laid out for you is also one that gives a legal cause of action, against the corporation in the jurisdiction where you were arrested or charged, and B, the individual officer. It's relying on the doctrine of notice and the clear laying out of Tennessee law in your favor. We have the transportation law, Title 55, which is what that's all about. Title 55 is about transportation, is a good and generous law. It is a good, open law. I have nothing to say against it. Okay, it is. I know it's positivist law. There's something to say against that generally, but given that we have a positivist law system where it takes hundreds and hundreds of pages, thousands of pages, to say what the law is, right? Unlike in the Bible, where we have great liberty. Biblical law is tremendously, tremendously liberating and tremendously free. And as the Lord Jesus says in John, my burden is light. And the law of God is a very light burden, I would say, indeed. But men's burdens are astronomical, very heavy. And I have my own copy of the Tennessee Code annotated, and it's I don't know, probably 100 pounds of books, and they're all hardbacks. And I have a fresh copy, a fresh edition, by the way, that I'm very glad to have in my library. And so where are we? David Toulis, the number is 800-8949. How was your New Year's? Do give me a call if you want to get on the show to talk about anything that's on your mind. Particularly, I would like to suggest, if you have a problem. I want to hear about people's problems. I want to know what's going on with you. What things are besetting your mind that have just stolen your tranquilness from you, that have deprived you of your normal aplomb, your normal way of thinking, because this thing is a burr in your underwear, or something that's just grabbed you and is not letting go. And I think getting back to the event yesterday, marking the Emancipation Proclamation, if indeed that was intended to free the slaves in the South, we are in the South, so let's say that there is a benefit, an ostensible benefit from that historical decree from President Lincoln to us, has it had its effect? And I would say that given our reform agenda here on the David Toulis Show, it hasn't. There are many areas that are Jim Crow era, Jim Crow theory constructs that are oppressive. And what I really want you to understand is that we can't have a strong town without reform on those points. Okay, reform on those very, very points. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to lay out what these reforms are. Some are very specific and you might say kind of technical, okay? But then there's also the general theory that we have for reforms. Do we want, for example, to have half-measure reforms such as what is proposed by Sheriff Hammond and David Roddy, the chief, hire more black people? That is not a reform. Okay, that having very empathic, sympathy-oriented meetings among police officers, recruits, and members of the gay community, as they're called, or Hispanics or African Americans in the poor quarters. Those things are not reforms. Those are just part of the training. Do we want half measured, or do we want an abolition? And I'm someone who willing to give cover to some black minister or some Christian liberal activist in one of the local groupings to say, we need to get past the police construct. We need to get past the police monopoly, the cartel, if you will. Let us have an open market in policing services. Let there be an alternative where still, of course, we always have the sheriff's department. The sheriff is connected to us through the county, Hamilton County, named, of course, after Alexander Hamilton, the big lover of debt, the big lover of debt. He was He was an immigrant, by the way, and loved the idea of a national debt and wanted Washington government to be involved in absorbing and paying for the debts of the states from the Revolution. And that had a very complicated financial plan that centralized, in an important way, centralized financial functions in Washington. So our county is named after him. And the number is 800-8949, 800-8949. You report and the world decides. Brought to you by Nuganomics.com. That's Nuganomics.com. And my name is David Twist. We're live on Facebook and also live on YouTube. And I'm the editor of Nuganomics. Do subscribe. Find out about half measures. I propose at least 10 half measures that will save policing if that's what you want to do. Is that something you want to do? I'm asking you. David Toulis, I've got some messages here, some very important ones. Hang on.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
Pratt Land and Development filed a lawsuit against the city council after what it calls illegal zoning that made its property unusable. The lawsuit names specifically Chip Henderson, accusing him and other defendants of grossly overstepping their authority. They demand that the zoning be reset to where it was before. Authorities say Edward J. McCone, a former Catholic priest assigned to the Chattanooga area, died in prison. He reportedly had a pattern of abuse involving as many as 30 boys over many years, starting in the 1970s. He served various parishes around the state, including Chattanooga and Nashville. The Chattanooga Police Department's increased patrols end today as the holiday season comes to a close. The CPD, along with the THP, were present in force on our roadways for the holiday season. Part of the reason for that is October was one of the deadliest months ever for Chattanooga drivers. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7 Action News now.
Oh, it can happen to anyone. Flat tire, overheated engine, or just a clackety-clack, and now you're on the side of the road. No worries, because Doug Yates Towing and Recovery is there 24 hours a day for you. That's right, 24-hour-a-day emergency roadside assistance. And you don't have to accept who your insurance company or your road assistance provider sends you. At Doug Yates Towing and Recovery, we want you off the road as safely and soon as possible. So they'll be there in a jiffy. Doug Yates Towing and Recovery with 24-hour emergency roadside service. Call 800-407-2371. That's 800-407-2371. Online, yatesrecord.com. That's yatesrecord.com. On Facebook at Doug Yates Towing and Recovery, LLC. Doug Yates Towing and Recovery. We don't want your arms and legs, just your toes. Doug Yates Towing and Recovery is a Nooga Radio 92.7 First Responder Friday sponsor. To our first responders, Doug Yates Towing and Recovery says thank you.
Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7.
Jeff Styles.
25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. Sean Hannity. CBS Radio News. David Toulis. Streaming strong at NugaRadio.com. NASCAR. Live on YouTube and Facebook.
Nooga Radio 92.7.
Your home is a constant work in progress. Repaint the walls? Yeah, easy enough. Leaky faucet? There's a video for that. But roof repair? You might want some help. That's where Chattanooga roofing contractors come in. They have 3 generations of roofing excellence you can count on. Leave the ladder in the garage. Go to chatroofing.com. That's chatroofing.com for Chattanooga roofing contractors, a roofing company you can trust.
Hey folks, Jeff Styles here, talk radio host and infamous technophobe. But I got to tell you, this Facebook Live that Nooga Radio does, it makes sense to me. It really does. Now, we're at 92.7 on the FM dial, but really where you need to go is NugaRadio.com and just do the streaming audio, 8 to 10 a.m. The first hour is mostly just me just throwing commentary in on top of the news. The second hour is me frustrating and irritating you beyond all belief. NugaRadio.com. Don't miss it every weekday.
Nooga Radio 92.7.
I'm always watching the Travel Channel. There was this one episode shot in the Mediterranean one night. It caught my eye. And the food, wow, definitely wanted to try some of that. Luckily, I didn't need to go halfway around the world. I found Olive Branch Mediterranean Foods right here in East Ridge. East Ridge. They were telling me how the menu's made fresh daily. It's authentic and so delicious. Your next culinary trip, not halfway around the world. It's right here, waiting for you at home.
Visit Olive Branch Mediterranean Foods, 3992 Ringgold Road. As a small business owner, you know that running a business is no easy task. You're in the office and on your third cup of coffee before most even roll out of bed. That's why you need office equipment and solutions that help keep your business running smoothly. The experts at RJ Young provide office technology that ensures your business's network stays efficient and secure, so you can focus on what truly matters, growing your business. To discover how RJ Young can help your small business grow, visit rjyoung.com/smallbusiness.
Call 423-875-3600 if you're looking to expand your professional look of your business. Then consider the vast opportunities that are available when you locate your office with the Raines Group family. Remember, it's location, location, location. And the Raines Group has the location for your professional office. Check out the spaces for lease at Executive Business Park on the Lee Highway. Small or large, we will build to suit your needs with the Raines Group. Call 423-875-3600 for the business professionals with the Raines Group.
Chattanooga weather. Great cloudy skies with a few scattered showers out there for your afternoon. Highs into the lower 50s. Tonight, more rain will move in. Lows near 45 with some mountain fog. For Thursday, after a wet start, dry for much of the day. Highs into the lower 50s with more rain returning for Friday. Tired of the pressures and hassles of car shopping? Come see what more people are making the short drive to Jackson Chevrolet Buick GMC in Lafayette or online at jacksongm.com. That's Jackson Chevy Buick GMC in Lafayette. And I'm Sorgene 12, Chief Meteorologist at Report. The Radio 92.7.
Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Toulis.
I argue for near over far, small over big, simple than complex, and down in the details in the footnotes at 5-point type in the neutral non-military, non-aggressive font of Geneva or Helvetica. I argue that we should have in favor personal over corporate and physical over abstract. That's my argument here on the David Toulis Show, where I argue for a local economy and the free market every day at 1 o'clock, just before Sean Hannity, whom we have at 3. And we are the station, of course, with Jeff Stiles, the CBS News at the top of every hour, and a 3-hour all-live, twaddle-free newscast in the morning starting at 6 with Russ and Val in the morning. That's right here. Like us on Facebook. And you can support my show at GoFundMe, The David Toulis Show. Now, we're marking a couple of things. Yesterday, there was the Emancipation Proclamation heralded by Dr. Eleanor Woods of the NAACP. At a church event where there were important officials that you might say is the good people here in Chattanooga, the sheriff, the chief of police, and the mayor. And today there is a commemoration of a different sort. There was a liberation, you could say, in a very dark way, of life from a man named Loretta Prater. He died 15 years ago today in the hands of police. His mother is Dr. Loretta Prater. She is a retired administrator from Southeast Missouri State University, 50 years here, married, a gospel minister here. They've lived as a couple here. She taught at UTC. She lives now in Cape Girardeau, and she's also an author. She's an author from the death, coming from the events that led to her son's death, Leslie Prater. Her book is called Excessive Use of Force, One Mother's Struggle Against Police Brutality and Misconduct. Loretta, thanks for joining my listener here on the David Toulis Show. Tell my listener what happened 15 years ago with your son, Leslie, there just off of Central Avenue. I think it was on Flynn Street. What happened between him and the 4 Chattanooga Police Department officers, Loretta?
Okay, well, of course, 15 years ago, our lives changed forever. And so what happened was, according to everything that we have been told in all the documents and everything, and eyewitnesses as well. Leslie was driving his car. He pulled into this alleyway that's right there near Central Avenue, right off of Central Avenue, right across from what was then one of the Franklin Strickland funeral homes. And he got out of his car. He pulled his clothes off, and someone saw this and called the police. And the lady who saw it talked to us directly, and she said that she called the police because she saw that there was somebody in need of help. And she told us that she wished she had not called them because she didn't know that they were going to kill him, that she thought they'd just come and help him. So what happened, when the first two officers came, only one officer approached Leslie, which was the correct thing to do. And he started talking to him. And based on his deposition, he said that he asked Leslie, why was he out there without his clothes on and whatever. And where are your clothes? Leslie said his clothes was in the car. And he said, well, let's walk to the car to get your clothes. And Leslie was doing that. He was cooperating with him. They were walking toward the car. And Leslie had asked him did he have a light? Because since it was outdoors there, he had cut his foot on some glass that was out there. And and he said that he told him that he had a medical condition, that he had, condition that would probably be something the police needed to know. But anyway, there was no confrontation or whatever. They were calmly walking to the car. Everything seemed normal, as we would expect, until backup came. And when backup came, the other officer that was with the first officer initially was just kind of there. He didn't interact with Leslie at that time. And when the other officers came, one of them, as soon as he got out of his car, he just shouted out, "Put your hands behind your back." Well, Leslie was obviously incoherent in terms of something was wrong, because the first officer said he didn't know whether he had come across someone who had a mental problem or whether he was just intoxicated. At that time, he really didn't know what he was dealing with. And so, of course, even according to their own guidelines, you don't give mixed messages to people like that. And so I guess Leslie probably didn't know what to do. He's doing what this officer told him to do, just walking calmly to his car with this officer to get his clothes, and then somebody else shouts, "Put your hands behind your back." But before he could do anything, those officers took him down, and 4 officers were on him and actually compromising him. They put his hands behind his back and handcuffed him. And I know you all in Chattanooga are dealing with something similar to that now, although it didn't lead to death, thank goodness. But he didn't have his hands where he could use his hands because they were cuffed. He was pepper sprayed. They used the hog tie technique, which is illegal even in their own standards. And 2 officers on the front of him, 2 on the back, crossing his legs, pushing those up toward his back, which actually caused him to end up with 21 rib fractures. And he had, and they pressed his face down in the mud. He had mud and grass in his nostrils, blood coming from his ear, all of these things that said that he was abused. His body was abused tremendously. He had dislocated, fractured shoulder. There were bruises and blood in the area of the scrotum. All of this stuff here that I'm telling you is documented by 2 autopsy reports, as well as some of the things that witnesses saw were happening to him. And even if they had just turned his head to the side, he could be alive today because he could have breathed, but they did not allow him to breathe, which resulted in a death by homicide from positional asphyxia. And as I stated, 2 different autopsy reports were done, one by Dr. King, who was the medical examiner in Chattanooga at that time, and the other one by Dr. Levy, who was the chief medical examiner for the state of Tennessee. And we had to have his body taken to Nashville for that examination. But they both concurred that. And it did show that he was intoxicated. And so our thing is, if they had not handled his body the way they did, had not prevented him from breathing, he would be alive today. And I think I remember maybe in the 3rd grade learning something about the respiratory system, in that you have to breathe to live. And Leslie was not posing any danger to those police officers. He did not harm them in any way. The medical examiner, Dr. King, had said under his fingernails. His fingernails were clean. He didn't even try to scratch them. And from the deposition that one of the officers gave, he admitted, no, I didn't feel threatened by him. He didn't try to hurt us or anything like that. And still today, we're trying to come to terms with this. Why did they kill him? The only thing I can say is that it was just evil that killed him, that worked through those 4 police officers. There was no reason that he should have been killed.
The police had a long statement, Loretta Prater, afterwards, a very, very long press statement. We don't see these anymore out of the police department, which is a department which says virtually nothing. It has PIOs that don't do much PIOing, but there was a long statement with a lot of self-justification, a lot of self-justifying statements in it. For example, he attempts to place him into custody for his own safety. And there's a discussion about resistance, that he's resisting. That is something that's often said to people who are beaten up by the police. Stop resisting, and that's part of the record. Often now it's on video, the police video. Stop resisting, even though the person is in handcuffs. He's resisting because his flailing arms may strike the officer's leg or brush against his arm. What do you say about that kind of language in this report, in this press statement from 15 years ago, Loretta? Did your son have?
That they were lying. Almost immediately they started lying, and also started their cover-up. Just a few hours after they killed him, they started that process, that cover-up process, and the lying process. You know, how the body is as far as your reflexes and whatever. And I always said from the very first TV report we gave was that Leslie was fighting death. He loved life. His movements were just because he was trying to breathe. He kept moving, trying to breathe. And even in the deposition, that police officer said they held him down for at least 10 minutes until he stopped moving. And when he stopped moving, he was dead. He just wanted to breathe. If they had just turned his head to the side, he could have breathed. But we have proof of a lot of their lies. As an example, even with their police chief at the time, Jimmy Donson, before we could even get to town, had talked to the police and had already started the lying process, saying that Leslie weighed over 300 pounds and he was over 6 feet tall. And the autopsy report showed that he weighed 232 pounds and he was not 6 feet tall. And when they first met with us on that Monday after Leslie was killed, the police chief even repeated that again. And my husband, said, that's not true. And one of the officers in there admitted that he knew that Leslie was not over 300 pounds and was not over 6 feet tall. And he was one of the officers actually in the autopsy situation. He was in the room when he was autopsied. And so then the question was to the chief, well, why did you say that? Well, he said that because that's what his people had told him. So his own officers had told him lies. And then he gets out there publicly and repeats those lies. And of course, he didn't even admonish them for even doing that. No accountability at all. And another thing that happened on that very night, and by the way, they called the mayor, who was Bob Corker. He came to the scene that night. And that's proven, too, because on one of the TV shows, news shows, they showed him there at the scene that night. But they allowed those 4 officers to go to the police services center and talk about what they were going to say. In other words, get their lie together. And any responsible police department knows that whenever there's more than one officer involved, you separate those officers, and each one of them is supposed to be interviewed independently by a supervisor. But that did not happen. And so it was lies on top of lies. They told us that we could see Leslie's body when we got to town. And when we got to town, they did not let us see his body. We were not able to see his body until we identified a funeral home, and we were able to see his body at the funeral home. But at first, when we got there, we were even told that we couldn't see him because he had been autopsied and all cut open and everything. And so I said, well, they said that this man has been killed with somebody over 300 pounds, weighing 300 pounds, I don't even know that's Leslie because I know he didn't weigh 300 pounds and he wasn't over 6 feet tall. And now we're here in town and nobody will let us see the body.
This is David Toulis, and we're talking with Loretta Prater. She's telling about the death of her son 15 years ago today at the hands of Chattanooga City Police. The man who died was 37 at the time. His name is Leslie Prater, and he was one of two sons of Dr. Prater and her husband. She's a longtime native now living in Cape Girardeau, retired university administrator. And there was a lawsuit now, Loretta Prater. Tell my listener about what happened in case he was not or she was not here at the time and didn't hear about it. What was the result of your U.S. District Court claim against the city and 17 police officers?
Okay, well, what happened, we had said initially we didn't even want to do a lawsuit. We wanted to just go to court. But it finally came to the point that the only way we could get any kind of change, because we were looking for some kind of change, and so it's called injunctive relief. And the only way we could get that would be to settle and say what we wanted. And I would say in terms of the lawsuit, of the federal lawsuit, we never mentioned any amount of money. You know, some people say, oh, I'm, suing for $50 million or something. We mentioned no amount of money. We just wanted justice, which we never did receive. And we wanted the truth to come out. And so we finally got to the point where it looked like in order to try to get some change, we needed to settle. And the city, by the way, from all indication that we could determine, were anxious to settle. They did not want to go to court. And I think it's because all of that dirty laundry from all those years would have come out if they had gone to court. But the outcome in terms of what we said we wanted, we said there were 4 conditions that they had to meet before we would consider settling that case. And one was that we wanted to have an external audit of that police department, because they always audit themselves and then they determine they're wonderful. You know, they drive around in these cars about Chattanooga's finest and everything. And so that was one of the things, and the city would have to pay for that. And they agreed to that, and the city paid for it. It was a $30,000 price tag on that. And then we found out that Leslie's death, being from position asphyxia, was something that they had taken out of their training. And it had been taken out for a number of years. In fact, one of the officers admitted he'd never even heard of position asphyxia, and said that, you know, there were certain things he would not have done if he had known that that would cause someone to die. Still, I can't understand why he didn't understand that, you know, you have to breathe to live. But anyway, so the other thing was that they would have to put that back into the training. And I would challenge the citizens of Chattanooga to find out if that is still going on, if they are training their officers how not to kill somebody from position asphyxia. And then the other thing was, because I had experience, long time experience with teaching, but also in my role at the university here, I was over a police academy. I had the administrative oversight over police academy and also over the Department of Criminal Justice. So I knew a lot of things that maybe other mothers didn't know about these situations just because of my job. And so I said, they're not getting enough training on affective training. They're getting plenty of training on how to shoot and stuff like that. And a lot of them are from the military, so they already know how to shoot. But I wanted them to understand about people, you know, that you're really killing someone's child when you do these things. And these people are unarmed and they're just killing them. And so I said I wanted to do some workshops, and it would be free of charge. I would come at my own expense, doesn't cost them anything. And even though, you know, they have to keep their accreditation and stuff like that, they have to have certain types of workshops. And I'm finding that these affective workshops right now, it seems like so many of them are taught by the police officers, which that kind of defeats the purpose. And I think they need more social scientists teaching those workshops. And so at first I just left it open-ended, and that was truly my intention. But they came back and countered and said that they would allow me to do 3 of those. And so I agreed that I would do those for academy people. And then the last thing I said is that I must, our family, my husband and I, we must see these people, these 4 police officers, because they had been so good at keeping them from us, not even wanting us to see their pictures or anything like that. They put something in the paper, and we found out later those were not even those officers. You know, it was a distractor. And so I said they would have to meet with us and stop being cowards. Meet with us face to face. You know, you kill our child, he's unarmed and everything, and then you won't even meet with us and let us see who you are. And and
we're talking here about Daniel Anderson, Jonathan Mance, Gregory Chambers, and Keith Hudgens. Those are the 4 officers, Loretta Prater.
I just heard those last 2.
The last 2 were Gregory Chambers and Keith Hudgens. And and Daniel Anderson.
Those were the 2 I heard. I didn't hear the first 2 that you said.
Jonathan, Daniel Anderson and Jonathan Mance, according to reports.
Those were the 4 officers involved, yes. And so it was interesting because when our attorney, we were working with our attorneys, and they were working with theirs, of course. And so when our attorney took that back in terms of what we were demanding, said, you want to settle? Okay, because I wasn't that interested at the time, as I said, and my child was already dead, so they couldn't bring him back either way. So they said, 2 of the officers said they would meet with the Praters, and the other 2 said they would not. So I said, well, okay, we'll just go to court. That's the end of it then. If I can't see these men, I'm having these nightmares of these faceless people killing my child. If I can't see them, then we're not settling. We're going to court. And then their person came back, their attorney, who is Phil Nobbers, I know he's with the city now as their chief person. He came back and said, well, they said they changed their mind. They would meet with the Praters, but they wanted to do it in Knoxville at the federal courthouse there. And so that was fine. And one thing that we did agree to is that we would not discuss the content of that meeting. And so I would not discuss it here either. But my thing was I wanted to see these people. I wanted to see their face up. And so that meeting did occur. And then, of course, the lawyers worked out this $1.5 million settlement.
This is David Schwartz. We're talking with Loretta Prater, who's the mother of a man who died at police hands 15 years ago, January 2, 2004. David Tullis will be right back. We've got the CBS News. CBS News is up just in a minute. We do thank you for tuning in to the David Tullis Show at 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1. Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
Pratt Land and Development filed a lawsuit against the city council after what it calls illegal zoning that made its property unusable. The lawsuit names specifically Chip Henderson, accusing him and other defendants of grossly overstepping their authority. They demand that the zoning be reset to where it was before. Authorities say Edward J. McCone, a former Catholic priest assigned to the Chattanooga area, died in prison. He reportedly had a pattern of abuse involving as many as 30 boys over many years, starting in the 1970s. He served various parishes around the state, including Chattanooga and Nashville. The Chattanooga Police Department's increased patrols end today as the holiday season comes to a close. The CPD, along with the THP, were present in force on our roadways for the holiday season. Part of the reason for that is October was one of the deadliest months ever for Chattanooga drivers. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7 Action News now.
Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons from 3 to 6 p.m. on Nooga Radio 92.7 FM.
Nooga Radio 92.7. Nooga Radio, Chattanooga weather.
Cloudy skies with a few scattered showers out there for your afternoon. Highs into the lower 50s. Tonight, more rain will move in. Lows near 45 with some mountain fog. For Thursday, after a wet start, dry for much of the day. Highs into the lower 50s with more rain returning for Friday. Tired of the pressures and hassles of car shopping? Come see what more people are making the short drive to Jackson Chevrolet Buick GMC in Lafayette or online at jacksongm.com. That's Jackson Chevy Buick GMC in Lafayette. And I'm Soren Gene 12, Chief Meteorologist at Report.
Nooga Radio 92.7.
Have a car wreck in Tennessee? Why hire an Alabama billboard lawyer for your car wreck? You'll never, ever meet that guy. Warren and Griffin work here, live here. You get to know them. You have a car wreck? Call Warren and Griffin. 265-4878, 265-4878. And let me tell you, they've got a killer thing going on right now, the hands-free Tennessee petition to save lives and make our roads safer. Put down your cell phones and just drive.
The first responders, these are the men and women who put themselves in harm's way for us. And here at Nooga Radio, we want to do our part to say thank you. On Nooga Radio, every Friday is First Responder Friday. We'll honor a first responder with a thank you gift from Nooga Radio's community partners. If there's a first responder you'd like us to honor, go to NoogaRadio.com and submit your nomination. First Responder Friday, sponsored by Doug Yates Towing and Recovery, the Mad Philly Sandwich Shop, New York Pizza Department, and Nooga Radio 92.7 FM.
Even if you like your job, there are some things that can drive you nuts, like the anonymous coward who steals your lunch from the break room fridge, or maybe Tyler, the IT guy, who gives you that condescending look when you tell him that your computer is acting up again, as if somehow it's your fault. You put up with these clowns every single day. But what happens when you've had enough? That's the day you decide to retire. At least that's the hope, right? But will you be able to retire? Can you afford to retire? That's why you need to talk to Ron and Christy Adams at One Family Financial. They can't do anything about Cody, that moron who heats up fish in the microwave, but they can strategize with you on how to get the most out of your 401k or pension, how to grow your money without losing your shirt in the market, and how to help make your money last in retirement. Talk to Ron and Christy today about whether you'll be ready to retire when you finally had it with seeing Ethan walk out of the bathroom again without washing his hands. Gross. Call Ron and Christy Adams at One Family Financial, 423-710-2009, 423-710-2009.
Truex Jr. is off the pace and he is headed to
WPLZ HD4 Ottawa, W224AZ Chattanooga.
Serving Chattanooga.
Broadcasting live from the center of the universe, the Tennessee Valley's most listened to news talk station.
Nooga Radio 92.7.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by ZipRecruiter.
I'm Pam Coulter. Democrats may get the hard sell on a southern border wall during a White House meeting an hour from now. And President Trump is warning the government could remain shut down for a long time. CBS's Stephen Portnoy reports.
The White House calls it a border security briefing for congressional leadership. It's set to take place in the Situation Room. Reporters are not expected to be brought in. Top Democrats say they'll attend, but they're skeptical. One aide says it may be more of a White House stunt than a sincere effort to break the impasse. Mr. Trump insists money for the border wall is needed, and he rejects the proposal of House Democrats who intend to pass bills tomorrow reopening shuttered agencies without funding for the wall.
Possibly setting the stage for an adversarial relationship ahead, Utah Senator-elect Mitt Romney is again questioning Donald Trump's fitness to be president. In a Washington Post op-ed, he said Mr. Trump's most glaring shortfall is lack of character. The president said he'd prefer that Romney focus on border security and other ways he could be helpful. Politico's Daniel Lippman.
This is kind of a clear shot across the bow and damaging for the Republican Party and for President Trump right now. I think it indicates that Mitt Romney is trying to be the new Bob Corker or Jeff Flake in terms of an internal party critic. He sees what Trump is doing as very dangerous long term.
U.S. diplomats are pressing for access to Paul Whelan, the American being held in Russia on spy charges. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
We've made clear to the Russians our expectation that we will learn more about the charges, come to understand what it is he's been accused of, and if the detention is not appropriate, we will demand his immediate return.
David Whelan says his brother is not a spy and was in Moscow for a wedding. It's colder than normal in parts of Nevada and California, and Tucson and other parts of southeastern Arizona are getting snow. CBS News meteorologist David Parkinson.
It's all a low-pressure system that's settled right in southeastern New Mexico. So that is what's snowing in Tucson, what's snowing in parts of New Mexico, where in New Mexico, at elevation, granted, they could see 6, maybe 7 inches of snow in some spots.
Stocks are higher at this hour, but market analyst Gene Peroni says weakness in Chinese manufacturing and concern about tariffs are making investors nervous.
What happens in China doesn't necessarily stay in China. So the overnight news that the manufacturing data was weaker than expected is really causing ripples around the world, including our market here.
Right now, the Dow's up 40 and NASDAQ is ahead 46. This is CBS News.
ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. ZipRecruiter's technology finds qualified candidates for businesses of all sizes. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free.
I'm Tiffany Haddish, and I use Groupon so much, they made me the spokesperson. Every day, Groupon helps small businesses by giving them easy-to-use marketing tools so they can engage new customers and bring in new business. But what I think they really mean is that Groupon keeps the door dinging, the cash register ringing, and puts butts in seats, all while helping neighborhoods thrive and customers save money. It's a win-win-win situation. Groupon, where businesses grow and customers save.
This week, you'll find great deals at Walgreens. Now with card, buy one, get one free on hundreds of vitamins and supplements through February 23rd. Save on great brands such as Nature's Bounty vitamins and more. And 16-ounce Blue Diamond almonds are just $5.99 with card. Get great deals on the essentials you need right here at your neighborhood Walgreens. Walgreens, trusted since 1901. Of equal or lesser value, restrictions and exclusions apply. See store for details.
Look for big hikes in the price of your prescription drugs.
Higher prices on hundreds of drugs. The average increase more than 6%. Allergan raising the price of dozens of its drugs nearly 10%. Some of the steepest price rises affect some generics, which account for 9 out of 10 prescriptions in the U.S. Drug makers are citing all sorts of rationales. But despite growing political pressure to keep costs to consumers down, the Wall Street Journal notes drug price rises continue to exceed inflation. Vicki Barker, CBS News.
The battle continues over artwork stolen by the Nazis in World War II. The director of Florence, Italy's Uffizi Gallery wants Germany to return the Dutch masterpiece, Vase of Flowers, now in the hands of a German family. They've declined to return it despite repeated appeals. Representatives say the family wants to be paid for the still life. But Uffizi director Ike Schmidt says the painting is the inalienable property of the Italian state. Pam Coulter, CBS.
3, 2, 1. Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
Pratt Land and Development filed a lawsuit against the city council after what it calls illegal zoning that made its property unusable. The lawsuit names specifically Chip Henderson, accusing him and other defendants of grossly overstepping their authority. They demand that the zoning be reset to where it was before. Authorities say Edward J. McCone, a former Catholic priest assigned to the Chattanooga area, died in prison. He reportedly had a pattern of abuse involving as many as 30 boys over many years, starting in the 1970s. He served various parishes around the state, including Chattanooga and Nashville. The Chattanooga Police Department's increased patrols end today as the holiday season comes to a close. The CPD, along with the THP, were present in force on our roadways for the holiday season. Part of the reason for that is October was one of the deadliest months ever for Chattanooga drivers. Russell Stroud, Chattanooga Radio News Talk 92.7 Action News now.
Expect cloudy skies with a few scattered showers out there for your afternoon. Highs into the lower 50s. Tonight, more rain will move in. Lows near 45 with some mountain fog. For Thursday, after a wet start, dry for much of the day. Highs into the lower 50s with more rain returning for Friday. Tired of the pressures and hassles of car shopping? Come see what more people are making the short drive to Jackson Chevrolet Buick GMC in Lafayette or online at jacksongm.com. That's Jackson Chevy Buick GMC in Lafayette. And I'm Sorgene 12, Chief Meteorologist, Pad Report.
The radio 92.7.
Have a car wreck in Tennessee? Why hire an Alabama billboard lawyer for your car wreck? You'll never, ever meet that guy. Warren and Griffin work here, live here. You get to know them. You have a car wreck? Call Warren and Griffin. 265-4878, 265-4878. And let me tell you, they've got a killer thing going on right now, the Hands-Free Tennessee petition to save lives and make our roads safer. Put down your cell phones and just drive.
If you could wish for anything this Christmas, what would you wish for? Well, a Saudi Daisy family wished that $25,000 in credit card debt would disappear. Well, guess who got an early Christmas present? Listen up, y'all. I'm Ben Phillips with Home Rate Mortgage. I'm in the business of saving people money. And if you want to save money around Christmas time, pick that cell phone up right now. 805-9100. You're not going to believe how much you can save. Home Rate Mortgage just cleaned an installation manager's chimney, ridding his family of $25,000 in credit cards right before Santa delivers presents. The best part is Santa's going to be a little more merrier this Christmas because this Saudi Daisy family is saving $1,100 per month, and you can do it too. So give us a call today. It's time to get on the sleigh. 805-9100 or homeratemortgage.com.
Turn a house into a home rate.
station you hear everywhere.
Cougar Radio 92.7.
Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Toulis.
It's day 15 in the hostage crisis at the city attorney's office, where my question, actually two questions tied together, are being held hostage. They're being given cold carryout, and when they sleep on their cots, they are their hands are bound, but in the front, not in the back, as in the initial phases of the hostage crisis downtown. Two questions regarding Title 55 and the state's authority, the city's authority, to harass private users of the highway that belong to the people, private users not involved in commerce. So this is David Toulis, and we are paying attention to the hostage crisis downtown, day 15, and we're waiting for liberation, which is to say the answer to the question, day 15, today. Two very simple questions of fact regarding the statute and the General Assembly. The name is David Toulis here at Nougat Radio, live on Facebook, and the editor of Nouganomics.com, the blogger with the biggest pin, the bow tie guy, wearing his bow tie on the beach in Florida. I've got on the phone with me Loretta Prater. Dr. Loretta Prater is a retired university administrator, lives in Cape Girardeau, formerly of Chattanooga, 50 years living here, taught at UTC even, and we're marking the 15th year today of her son's death at the hands of the Chattanooga Police Department. Four officers who took his life of a man who was inebriated, not quite in his right mind, a little bit overweight, according to the coroner's report, but he died of positional asphyxia. He was hogtied and could not breathe, though they were sitting on him, standing on him, poking their knee on his head and in his back, breaking numerous ribs in the encounter just off of Central Avenue. Loretta Prater, let me ask you, you have a book out called Excessive Use of Force, One Mother's Struggle Against Police Brutality and Misconduct, available at Amazon and other outlets. Tell my listener about reforming police, because part of your lawsuit was not just for damages. You didn't specify damages, but you did want there to be reforms in the department,
right.
You did get some short-lived, well, two maybe short-lived reforms. One that you're asking about the rules of officers and the use of pressure and force and tying people down and sitting on them, that kind of thing. There you have some questions about that. Is there a reform in the rules of engagement, if you will? Now, so you have a reform interest in your heart, Dr. Prater. You want things to be better for the people here, though you don't live here anymore. What direction should police reform take in a city like Chattanooga? What do you see as an author on this topic would be good for reform in Chattanooga?
Okay, well, one of the things is community policing, but they don't do community policing in Chattanooga. I don't think they even know about it, how to do it.
Well,
community
they do.
Policing,
actually.
as I understand it, in Chattanooga, you put the police out there in the community, and they end up harassing people in certain communities. But real community policing is when the people and the department come together, grassroots, in terms of making decisions and whatever in the best interest of everybody. I want the citizens to be alive and remain living. I want the police officers also, their lives to be safe. But the way it's going is, people are distrusting them, and they cannot get trust by that. Another thing is you have to get the right people on the force. We need policing. I believe in policing, but not as it exists today. Because it's just aggressive, beating up people and that kind of stuff. There's so many of them do, not all of them. But this is the stuff that makes people really upset. But when you recruit people, you don't want someone to show up in a warm body and just put a warm body in a uniform and give them a gun. They have to be well trained, but that training should include more than just, as we mentioned earlier, just how to shoot and whatever. Other thing is the leadership. The leadership is very important. I really applaud the leadership that we have here in Cape Girardeau. I think our police chief does a wonderful job and is an example of how to do community policing. But one of the things I can't understand, especially when citizens have a right to vote, I don't understand why they keep putting the sheriff and keep voting him back in, because I remember a few years ago he made a public statement about drug dealers, and he said, send them to the morgue. I'm gonna run them out of town, or send them to the morgue and stuff like that. Well, to me, if you have laws, you should be enforcing the laws, not saying you're just going to send somebody to the morgue. So I thought when I heard that was just a green light to go out there and just kill some people.
Well, let me ask you: was that Sheriff Jim Hammond, Loretta Prater? Because are you attributing that statement to Sheriff Hammond?
And I, in fact, I have his direct quote in my book. I'll tell you, if you want to know what's going on in Chattanooga and what has been going on for a number of years in terms of policing, you need to read this book. And if people, and it's not that I'm just trying to sell books. Maybe they have it in the library. You could go and check it out. It seems that Barnes & Noble locally is not being cooperative in terms of having those books on the shelf. People are having a hard time getting the book. So a lot of them in Chattanooga, they've told me they have the book, but they have been ordering from Amazon. So I don't understand why Barnes & Noble doesn't want their business. So I have done book signings in other Barnes & Nobles, but they have yet to schedule one there, even though I said, I come and do one because the people are wanting to sign. People are stopping me when I'm in Chattanooga and saying, I have the book, can I meet you somewhere and you can sign it? So that's showing that they're not really interested in pushing the book. But I think it's because there's so much in here that is revealed about what we went through, the lies, that they told us, and the fact that we kept pushing back. They thought we were stupid, I guess. And we knew that they were lying. We knew when they were doing things wrong, and we just weren't going to have it.
Well, let me ask you about. We're talking with Loretta Prater, and whose son Leslie was perished at the hands of police 15 years ago. What about the idea of minority cops? That's in the news today, in the headlines here in Chattanooga, where efforts are being made. There's a reward given for bringing a minority candidate to the Chattanooga Police Department, $500 reward by David Roddy, announced yesterday. And then Sheriff Hammond is saying, if you're a minority and you want to be in the Sheriff's Department, just apply at age 18. We'll get you in early and start your career in law enforcement. Is that an answer? Does that amount to much, Loretta Prater?
Well, my feeling is that there's talent among all races and whatever. That this particular position, we should be looking for the best people. There was a minority police officer, an African-American police officer that helped to kill Leslie. That didn't help us. There was a African-American police chief at the time. The very first judge that was assigned to the case was African-American, and he recused himself. The only reason I think he can think of is because, we all African-Americans, but, white judges don't necessarily recuse themselves from taking cases of white people. So I don't just say a person shows up as an African-American is going to be a wonderful police officer. I think that all the officers should have the high standard applied to them. And would I love to see more diversity on the police force? Yes, but not just because they're African-American. I think they need to be held to the same standard as other police officers, men of whom are not held to the standard and are doing things wrong. And another thing I think is important is their leadership. There's some places where, the chiefs are really the part of the problem.
Let me ask you about the training, Loretta Prater. The training of police officers is something my listener wants to ask you about. Officers have about 158 hours or so, according to a national study cited by the Police Executive Research Forum, 158 hours of military-style training. That's gunplay, tasers, gas batons, physical restraint, and that kind of thing. But about 15 or maybe 20 hours at the most of negotiation and de-escalation. Is that a good proportion? And if that's not a good proportion, what do you think would be better in the way of a training regime in Chattanooga and other cities across the country?
Well, that's a terrible proportion. It should be closer to 50-50. And a lot of them with the military background, they already know how to shoot. And it seems like, and you probably heard this before, that so many police officers appear to just be afraid of a black male. I mean, they see a black male and they think, okay, I got to use aggression and all this. And so they need to have some multicultural training if they're going to do that job. If they can't do the job like that and do it well, they need to find something else to do and just stop shooting and killing and just aggressively handling, especially black males, just because they happen to be clothed in black skin. So, yeah, I think they should have some of the best training of all training. But one of the things I think of, too, a lot of times a white person does something really crazy and bizarre, like the young man who killed the people in the church in South Carolina. And so somehow the training of those officers brought him in without killing him. And so often, and a lot of us said, oh, gee, if that had been a black man, he would have been dead. There's no way they would have brought him in alive. And why do we feel that way? Because we keep seeing that kind of thing over and over. They see a black person, they kill him first, and then they ask questions later. And in Lester's case, they can't even say that they thought he was armed. They knew he was not armed. They could see he wasn't armed. And there was just no reason for them to behave the way they did. That's why I said it was just evil that killed him. Now, here's the thing that I feel. In Chattanooga, you should know something is wrong because they cannot keep a police chief for one thing. They keep changing. And it's almost like if you're cleaning up and you just sweep the dirt under the rug, then that dirt is still there. So over the years, there's no accountability hardly for any of those officers. I mean, they can curse out one of their supervisors and get fired. They kill my son, they get a week off with pay. And so, I mean, that's not right, of course. And so what they do, and as far as I know, those officers are probably still there because they didn't even give them desk jobs when they took them back. They just put them back out there on the street after a week, even before the investigation was over. And so that said to us, your son does not matter at all. You know, he's dispensable, and you just go back to Missouri and just forget about it.
We're talking with Loretta Prater, whose son died 15 years ago today at the hands of Chattanooga Police Department officers. Loretta, let me ask you a question before I let you go regarding reform. Reform is something that I'm very much interested in, and I think it would be a benefit to my listener. Is it possible for there to be reforms or even abolition of police, given the fact that there's growing sentiment against policing per se and law enforcement per se, and there are technological advances such as smartphones and apps and support group apps like Uber that would allow for a decentralization of that function, a privatization even of that function. What do you think about that? Is it right to call for abolition and replacement, relying on the sheriff, or do we need to have police departments like Chattanooga's run by city government? Loretta Prater.
Well, I think that police departments should be a part of the government. Now, I'm sort of leery of the privatization. I've seen some problems with that, even when, say, Silverdale, went private and whatever, and that's common around the country. But I just think that we need to have massive reform, but the citizens need to be involved in that. But the other thing that would really help with the reform to kick it off is accountability. If the police felt like, if I kill this person, I'm going to go to jail, because there are laws out there for murder, for aggravated assault, for, whatever you want to call it, first and second degree murder. But they know that, hey, you don't have to worry about that, because we're going to protect you. That blue wall of silence is very high, it's very strong, and it's very real and very much in effect in Chattanooga, as in other communities as well. So I think that the government, it should be a partnership with the people, the officers, and the civic departments. One thing is, a lot of times when money is involved, people get interested. I really would challenge the citizens, and I've asked this before, but I don't think anything has been done about it. Find out, demand that they tell you in Hamilton County and in the city of Chattanooga, how much money, how much of your public dollars that you have worked hard for has been spent on getting these police officers off the hook. You'd probably be shocked, because some of them, the people didn't die, and so they didn't get as much press maybe as others, but still they had probably, I know they paid off families over the years. And so find out where your public dollars are going, because those dollars could be going to education and healthcare and all kind of places. If you look at the pie in terms of how money is spent, how public dollars are spent, more and more money is spent with police and law enforcement, keeping people locked up, even when they're innocent, a lot of them. And then less on education and healthcare and other social services. And so maybe that's where we need to start with trying to get people to wake up.
This is David Toulis, and we're talking with Loretta Prater. And Loretta Prater, Dr. Prater in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, thank you very much for talking with my listener and me about the death of your son 15 years ago today. Leslie Prater, at the hands of police, died, and there was, as you were telling me, a $1.5 million settlement and some reforms in the department. Thank you very much, Loretta Prater, for chatting with me.
Well, the settlement wasn't $5 million.
No, 1.5 million.
Just 1.5.
Yes, ma'am.
1.5. But if you want to know some details about what all happened, you need to get that book, because it's all in there.
Yes, ma'am. This is David Toulis, and go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Toulis here, and the book is called Excessive Use of Force, One Mother's Struggle Against Police Brutality and Misconduct. You can find it again. The author's name is Loretta Prater, and that is the title. You can look for it at Amazon.com, about a Chattanooga case discussed in detail. The name is David Toulis, and I saw shocking figures about 2018. We are thinking about having a better 2019. And do you know that the killing of babies was the largest loss of life, man-caused loss of life in the world in 2018, according to the United Nations? 41.9 million boys and girls destroyed in utero. 41.9 million children perishing at the hands of the state licensed medical profession. Is that something that we want to ask God about? 8.2 million died that year of cancer. Last year, 5 million died of smoking, of taking a drag on the cigarette or the pipe or the cigar. 1.7 million died in 2018 of HIV/AIDS, the inability to deflect diseases, the loss of bodily defenses. 1.7 million people, but 41.9 million children slain by policy, by permission of state governments, national governments, worldwide. And the latest figures that I have, they're always moldy for Hamilton County, is about, I think the year is maybe 2016, is maybe 2017, I think it's 16, about 230 children of women residing in Hamilton County. For every 33 boys and girls born last year, 10 were liquidated. 10 were liquidated. And in our country, the remarkable disproportion of human liquidations are among Black people, among African Americans. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, did not like Black people. She was really much better than to like them. And so she was all for reducing the size of unwanted people. Yesterday morning, just to tell you about a very remarkable man, Curtis Kane was a doctor in Mississippi in, I think, 1968 or so. When the federal government created the Medicaid system, he insisted that he would not take part, and had a letter that went out. You may have read it at NewEconomics.com, a letter with about 100 points explaining why his fellow physicians should not take part in the federal program. He said, you'll become clerks of the federal government before too long. And he was right. He maintained, though, for many years his practice in Jackson, Mississippi, where his funeral will be held soon. I called him yesterday, and his daughter Carol answered the phone and said, "My dad died this morning. He died this morning suddenly at a senior care center in Hickston." I had met him tending to my mother, who was at Life Care of Hickston. She was there for a month following hip surgery. And Dr. Kane was wheeling about, around the grounds of the neighboring senior care facility and rehab facility where she was an inmate. And we struck it off in a great conversation about the Constitution. He was very glad to talk about constitutional rights and the structure of our government. And he died yesterday morning, and I was very sorry about that, because I had hoped to get him on the program again to tell you about the whole idea of emoluments and inorments and titles of nobility. These are important concepts to keep in mind, because what we have in our day in our law here in the United States is a government where emoluments and private favors are rampant. The parties that most benefit from them are, let me back off that superlative there. One party that generates a great deal of benefit for itself in the law is the bar. And there is going into the hopper in Nashville before the General Assembly January 9, just a few days off, is the John Gentry remonstrance, in which he's going to target the impossibility of reform apart from the remonstrance process, which is a constitutional way of undoing the favors lawyers have written to the statute. That is where the deep state lies. We do have a deep state in Tennessee. And John Gentry, you can read about him at Nuganomics.com, is going to be filing in Nashville a remonstrance to try to undo this, to say we can't, we are broken and we demand relief. We demand redress of grievances. David Tulis, Nuga Radio.
3, 2, 1. Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news. Now,
Pratt Land and Development filed a lawsuit against the city council after what it calls illegal zoning that made its property unusable. The lawsuit names specifically Chip Henderson, accusing him and other defendants of grossly overstepping their authority. They demand that the zoning be reset to where it was before. Authorities say Edward J. McCone, a former Catholic priest assigned to the Chattanooga area, died in prison. He reportedly had a pattern of abuse involving as many as 30 boys over many years, starting in the 1970s. He served various parishes around the state, including Chattanooga and Nashville. The Chattanooga Police Department's increased patrols end today as the holiday season comes to close. The CPD, along with the TAD, were present in force on our roadways for the holiday season. Part of the reason for that is October was one of the deadliest months ever for Chattanooga drivers. Russell Stroud, Nuga Radio News Talk 92.7 Action News now.
Oh, it can happen to anyone. Flat tire, overheated engine, or just a clackety-clack, and now you're on the side of the road. No worries, because Doug Yates Towing and Recovery is there 24 hours a day for you. That's right, 24-hour-a-day emergency roadside assistance. And you don't have to accept who your insurance company or your road assistance provider sends you. At Doug Yates Towing and Recovery, we want you off the road as safely and soon as possible. So they'll be there in a jiffy. Doug Yates Towing and Recovery with 24-hour emergency roadside service. Call 800-407-2371. That's 800-407-2371. Online, yatesrecord.com. That's yatesrecord.com. On Facebook at Doug Yates Towing and Recovery, LLC. Doug Yates Towing and Recovery. We don't want your arms and legs, just your toes. Doug Yates Towing and Recovery is a Nuga Radio 92.7 First Responder Friday sponsor. To our first responders, Doug Yates Towing and Recovery says thank you.
Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. Sean Hannity, CBS Radio News. David Tulis, streaming strong at NugaRadio.com. NASCAR, live on YouTube and Facebook.
Nuga Radio 92.7.
Your home is a constant work in progress. Repaint the walls? Yeah, easy enough. Leaky faucet? There's a video for that. But roof repair? You might want some help. That's where Chattanooga roofing contractors come in. They have 3 generations of roofing excellence you can count on. Leave the ladder in the garage. Go to chatroofing.com. That's chatroofing.com for Chattanooga Roofing Contractors, a roofing company you can trust.
Hey folks, Jeff Stiles here, talk radio host and infamous technophobe. But I got to tell you, this Facebook Live that Nuga Radio does, it makes sense to me. It really does. Now, we're at 92.7 on the FM dial, but really where you need to go is NugaRadio.com and just do the streaming audio, 8 to 10 a.m. The first hour is mostly just me just throwing commentary on top of the news. The second hour is me frustrating and irritating you beyond all belief. NugaRadio.com. Don't miss it. Every weekday.
Nuga Radio 92.7.
I'm always watching the Travel Channel. There was this one episode shot in the Mediterranean one night. It caught my eye. And the food, wow, definitely wanted to try some of that. Luckily, I didn't need to go halfway around the world. I found Olive Branch Mediterranean foods right here in East Ridge. East Ridge. They were telling me how the menu's made fresh daily. It's authentic and so delicious. Your next culinary trip, not halfway around the world. It's right here, waiting for you at home.
Visit Olive Branch Mediterranean Foods, 3992 Ringgold Road.
As a small business owner, you know that running a business is no easy task. You're in the office and on your third cup of coffee before most even roll out of bed. That's why you need office equipment and solutions that help keep your business running smoothly. The experts at RJ Young provide office technology that ensures your business's network stays efficient and secure, so you can focus on what truly matters, growing your business. To discover how RJ Young can help your small business grow, visit rjyoung.com/smallbusiness.
Call 423-875-3600 if you're looking to expand your professional look of your business. Then consider the vast opportunities that are available when you locate your office with the Raines Group family. Remember, it's location, location, location. And the Raines Group has the location for your professional office. Check out the spaces for lease at Executive Business Park on the Lee Highway. Small or large, we will be able to suit your needs with the Raines Group. Call 423-875-3600 for the business professionals with the Raines Group.
Expect cloudy skies with a few scattered showers out there for your afternoon. Highs into the lower 50s. Tonight, more rain will move in. Lows near 45 with some mountain fog. For Thursday, after a wet start, dry for much of the day. Highs into the lower 50s with more rain returning for Friday. Out of the pressures and hassles of car shopping, come see what more people are making the short drive to Jackson Chevrolet Buick GMC in Lafayette or online at jacksongm.com. That's Jackson Chevy Buick GMC in Lafayette. And I'm Sorgene 12. She can hear all she's had before.
The radio 92.7.
Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Toulis.
David Toulis back safely and happily up on the microphone here on the David Toulis Show at Nooga Radio. I have a bit of sand on my bow tie because I actually wore it on the beach this past week. We were at Daytona Beach Shores with family, visiting my wife Jeanette's sister and her husband and one of their daughters, and make sure I tell you about my conversation with a minister at a church in let's see, the name of the town is it's Port Orange. It's Spruce Creek Presbyterian Church. Rick Kokonis and I had a discussion about John 18, and I asked a question about a writer named Ridibos about the coming of the kingdom. And it's interesting to know that there are sharp divisions even in the Reformed world about what the kingdom means. Well, I'm refreshed, and I'm glad you are too. I hope you had a great time off. David Toulis here. I know I've got on the phone a listener in Peoria. Steve, tell my listener, my other listener here on the David Toulis Show, what's on your mind? You called me with something to say today.
Well, as I was listening to your other guest that you had on there that was describing about what happened to her son by the police, you mentioned that part of their training was so many hours of military training. And this was foreseen by our forefathers. It was called a standing army, and they were against a standing army. Because people have a misconception of what the militia is. People believe that the militia is an army that's created by our states or federal government. And that's far, far from the truth. The militia are the people of this country. It has nothing to do with what the state creates or what the federal government creates. So any law that they come up, and if I'm not mistaken, earlier today I heard somebody on something talk about, I believe it was Tennessee, that forbid the militia basically from 18 to 20 years old from being able to buy certain firearms. Well, the state of Illinois did the same thing. And the militia has nothing to do with the policies of a state or federal government. That has to do with the people. So they're directly attacking the people. So, but to get back with what the lady was talking about, our police departments are getting military training. That is what our forefathers warned us about. That they will become a standing army, and a standing army is a threat to our liberties.
Well, your idea, what you're saying, Steve, is that a militia are armed people who have a protective interest and a protective impulse. They are among the people, but when you have police who are specialized, professional, and on a state or city payroll, they are effectively above the people, enforcing the law downward upon society. They're enforcing laws, often laws that are simply law for alleged crimes which have no injured party. They're victimless crime statutes that are enforced, or provisions of let's say the Commercial Code on Transportation enforced against the people downward. They're not among us anymore, and indeed, police are socially unique. They are separate from common society. Steve.
Yes. And the thing about a militia, when it was created, a militia was used to prevent an establishment from creating a standing army. So what happens is you've got a difference between what rights are by the people and what laws are by those who enforce them. So that was protection that the people had, the right to bear arms and to have a well-regulated militia. Well-regulated militia meant trained. Well-regulated was how they came about learning and educating themselves, and the training to properly use the firearms. That's what the militia is to be able to protect themselves, their property, and this country.
So the militia concept, Steve, does have a social claim. You have a right to bear arms personally, which the High Court narrowly ruled. But also, in the larger sense, a militia is society is armed. We have an armed society and an armed people, not individually, but counted as a whole. And you're suggesting that they are in the older colonial concept of the militia. They are trained in the use of powder and horn and rod, cleaning rod and barrel. They knew about their flints and how to keep their powder dry and to fire smoothbore guns at Indians and others.
Does arms just mean firearms? The right to bear arms.
Well, arms would be any kind of weapon that has a lethal potential.
Any kind of weapon, yes. And what does the Second Amendment say? See, you've got to read it. You have to read this as it's said, what it says. We've got too many people interpreting stuff. You've got Republicans interpreting this. You've got Democrats interpreting that. Then it goes to a court, and a court wants to interpret something. They can't interpret what is said. Infringe, shall not be infringed, says what it says. But yet, courts have said that states can regulate the Second Amendment. That is a total lie. That is a total lie. The Supreme Court is reckless for putting out an opinion stating that a state can regulate the Second Amendment when the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed.
Right. It says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So the private right is viewed in the context of people gathering together as they wish to secure the free state. The free state, of course, is the state that's not owned by any private interest, as we have today. We don't have free states. We have possessed states that are bound by insurance companies, bound by lawyers, and the like, corporate interests.
Right, but you have to understand, the militia, in order for a free state, are the ones who to keep the state free.
Right. Well, listen, thanks very much, Steve, for calling. We've been chatting with Steve in Peoria. He's my listener in Peoria. And again, thanks for calling. The number is 800-8949. That's 800-8949. There was some question on January the 1st about roadblocks in Chattanooga. the TV station, I think it was TV9, had file footage, if you will, of roadblocks in Chattanooga, implying that there was one on the 1st of January. Was there? What do you know about this? Did you, my listener, see a roadblock in the Chattanooga area? Because what I can do is, in trying to track down whether there was one, determine if proper notice was made. The Tennessee Highway Patrol says in its calendar of checkpoints that the first one in this county, in Hamilton County, is on the 11th. Apparently, if you're in Bradley County, the first one is on the 4th at Benton Pike and Minnis Road. Our first one in this county, Hamilton, is on the 11th at Boy Scout Road and Sand Switch Road. That's a driver's license for checking drivers. And then the next one will be on the 18th of January. That's at Thrasher Pike and Highway 27 exit. And then later on in the month at the 25th, Suck Creek at the boat ramp. Suck Creek is a famous place for checkpoints, but not one on the 1st. Was there? What did I miss? Now, if you're in Tennessee, please let me know. 800-8949. That's the number. 800-8949. Do let me know. Now, I was mentioning Herman Ridderbos, and his book was published by Presbyterian and Reformed, I think 1964. And I have a copy. It's not marked up, which means that I haven't read it, but I did look through it this morning. There was an argument that I had, you might say kind of a gentle argument, at a Presbyterian church in Port Orange, Florida, on the Lord's Day Sunday when I went to visit with family. And they were waiting in the car for me as I had a kind of extended discussion about the coming of the kingdom, because the question was regarding the Lord's words and the kingdom. What is the kingdom, and how is it coming? When is it here? How do we work for it? What is our job as Christians? And the question really was, in my mind, does the Scripture have anything to say? Let's just say on prisons, and I mentioned prisons specifically, and alleged that the Scriptures prohibit prisons, that prisons are anti-Christian. They are anti-God to have a prison system, because what you do with a prison system is thwart justice. You thwart the operation of restitution, which is to say the restitution of the victim and the restoration of the offender, because the Scripture doesn't have prisons. There's no middle way between restitution, restoration on one hand, and capital punishment on the other. It's a very limited system of jurisprudence. So all things are restored. The capital offenses would include buggery, rape, murder, and the like. Everything else, property crimes, they're all crimes are put through the grid that we have here in Chancery, in Hamilton County Chancery Court, and that's called lex talionis, or equity. It's called equity, and that simply means eye for eye, tooth for tooth, stripe for stripe, wound for wound. That means to say that if there's a wrong done, the answer to the wrong brought about by the judge, right? The judge is there to enforce the restoration. The response, the payment, if you will, the fine, if you will, the compensation is the same. So a stripe gets a stripe, or the dollar worth of the stripe to the offender. And what you have is you have kind of a marketplace of restoration, where you might say a bid made for the loss of an arm, the loss of a leg, an injury in a car wreck, let's say, and those injuries are monetized, and then the offender has to make good on the amount, right, or provide some kind of service. If he can't make good, he provides a penal servitude to make good until the debt is paid. There is slavery in the Scriptures. There is slavery in the Scriptures, but it's regulated to be just. Slavery that we have today, state slavery of the kind, for example, that oppresses Grenda Harmer, the inmate in Pikeville, from whom I got a letter, that is entirely unjust, and it is state slavery. Now, the question that came up with the man who gave the sermon at the Spruce Creek Presbyterian Church, Rick Kokonis, was on the use of the Bible and bringing about reform. He had the view which a group of Christians called the amillennialists have, and also the premillennialists, that would be most Baptists. Most Christians are in either of these two categories, that there is nothing that the Bible has to say about prisons, about the bail bond industry, about licensing requirements, let's say, of occupations of common right. These people don't recognize that we have an interest in God and a directive from God to defend such things, the freedom of occupations. We are forbidden to allow. We cannot allow, we cannot permit, and cannot tolerate as Christians Federal Reserve notes, the green rectangle issued by the Federal Reserve System because they are monetary frauds and they are a form of theft, government sanctioned theft. Can we accept police if we're Christians? Can we accept Obama and Bush and Trump wars of adventure? Where are they found in the Bible with support? And the minister had essentially a kind of a neutral argument, and I would call it an argument that is pietistic. In other words, his Christian theory, though it was Presbyterian, and I'm a Presbyterian, though it had some elements of the Reformed faith in it, I'm Reformed, was in the end pietistic, which is to say makes Christianity irrelevant. And so we discussed that, and his perspective is generally pessimistic. There's not much we can do to improve things. We're not called to improve society. We're just called to be holy Christian people with the right thoughts and good theology. That's kind of the limit of much of what passes for Reformed theology, which is the best theology. Don't get me wrong. It is the best theology, the most consistent, the most systematic, but it doesn't give the people in the pew anything to work with. What am I supposed to be for? Can I launch a crusade to end the prison system, starting with the for-profit prison system, right? By the way, TV9 has a report out just on its website pointing out that an audit in Georgia holds that inmates kept in privately run prisons are more expensive than those in state prisons. A state prison costs $44.56 per inmate per day. It's $49 and some change for inmates in a private prison, according to the House Appropriations Committee and the Atlanta Journal Constipation. So this is what Bowtie asked of ministers, even visiting, and I think his perspective was very pessimistic. There's not much we can do. I'm in the third category of Christian, which is to say an optimist is also called post-millennialist, and that is that Armageddon and that the tribulation is in the past, right? It's in the past, and now that these things are over, the great hell that Christians went through for 400 years is over, and now there's building, and you might say conquering the nations for the Lord Jesus, whom we worship as our personal saviors, but who's also, according to the Great Commission, the Savior of nations, right? And the nations are to be taught to worship Him and make their institutions conform to His law. That is the optimistic and can-do perspective that I have, and I can't not have it because I'm a member of the press. And so in that line, I just want you to know that what I'm getting up to. I'm talking now about my Christmas book list. Okay, I got some. Jeanette asked me what I would ask for in the way of gifts, and she wanted a book, and she'd already bought it. So I wrapped it for her. And it was under the tree first of all the gifts this year at the David Tulis household. 800-8949, 800-8949 is the number. But I asked for two. Now, just quickly, I did get read on vacation in Florida. I did get most of a book read that is called Discovery: How to Win Your Case Without Trial by John DeMay. John DeMay, a very good attorney. In his book, which I read in great care, Discovery: How to Win Your Case Without Trial, because that's what when I'm in court, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be going after some of these people, perhaps on my own, in my own interest, to defend my rights. You might say representatively for you. Okay, this is all for you, my listener, if I end up in court. Now, but I had that book for some time. Mike gave it to me as a gift. But I did get it read, and new on my bookshelf is book number 1 is Bruno Bettelheim, The Informed Heart. He was an academic Jew, follower of Freud, living in Vienna after World War I, and he spent a year in 2 German concentration camps. So the book is about the concentration camp and how fares the psychoanalysis in determining who will fold and who will be noble and great. And what he found out was, to his dismay, is that psychoanalysis couldn't explain how the worst in the prison, in the concentration camp, became the worst. Those most fit, with their id and superego and all that in order, he said you'd think would be the most fit to survive were the ones who collapsed and lavishly surrendered their confidences to the guards, and groveled for the extra bit of meat in the soup. And those whom he said psychoanalytically are the worst candidates, those least healthy, right? They were the ones who stood out in self-denial. He couldn't figure it out. And so I'm reading this book because I want to understand how the concentration camp system works psychoanalytically from the position of this follower of Freud. And the book is called The Informed Heart, on retaining the self in a dehumanizing society. Because we live in a dehumanizing society now. And that's a paperback. Thanks, Jeanette, for that book, The Informed Heart, by Bruno Bettelheim, who eventually moved to New York and taught in the academy. The second book is on reform, because we have as Christian people, as concerned people, we have got to get rid of the prison industrial complex. And I'm trying to create a taste for this. Okay, on the David Tulis show here, 92.7 FM, the Sean Hannity station, a taste for the end of the prison gulag, the end of state slavery in my state, Tennessee. It is my state. I identify with Tennessee. I'm a Tennessean born here in Chattanooga. And I belong here, and I know you belong where you are. The book I have in my hand is called The Conviction Factory, The Collapse of America's Criminal Courts, by a noted jurist and noted author, Roger Roots, who is a practicing attorney. I read the court case about how he had to sue to become a licensed attorney, because he became a felon very early in his youth, committing a drug offense, I think it was. And so it's a history of courts as the conviction factory. And that's what we have in Chattanooga. This is operating right now in Chattanooga. It's going on right now. We have downtown in Howland County Sessions Court, in Circuit Court, Howland County, in criminal court, and also in U.S. District Court, we have a conviction factory. It's designed to make innocent people plead guilty. It's designed to pressure people. And the state is working on both sides. The state is working on the prosecutorial side, and where there's a great deal of prosecutorial misconduct and a great deal of sloppiness, tremendous sloppiness and carelessness about the law and about the rights of the people. And then you have the PD, the public defender, on the other side saying, well, the best thing you can do to avoid this charge stacking threat against you is just to plead guilty. Plead guilty to this offense and they'll write off the others. And very little goes to court. 97% of the people who come before this machinery of intimidation and threat, 98% plead guilty. And many times, probably more than half the time, the charges are misapplied, but they plead anyway because they don't have any hope. What can we do about this system? This drives me nuts. This drives me mad. And also, I have in my heart a prayer that I will do something to help people start yearning for reform, yearning for an abolition of prison and other machinery that is oppressive and ungodly, so we can have a prosperous and just Chattanooga. I think there's hope. David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
3, 2, 1. Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
Pratt Land and Development filed a lawsuit against the city council after what it calls illegal zoning that